So we are now live. This is our third TADSummit Revisited, and we are very fortunate to have with us Amos, the CMO and I guess founder of WSO2.Telco. So hello, Amos.
Hi, how are you?
So the format of this is it's just a chance to ask some more questions around Amos's presentation. We had limited time at TADSummit, so this is a chance for us to go into more detail. Now I've got about 9 questions that have been sent through via email. We've got this streaming live, and we can take live questions as well. So fingers crossed we can get a few more questions in as well. So, Amos, I'll kick off. First question. I think this was a very good point you made in your presentation, was that agility is not just about technology. It requires changing people, mindset, and processes. So one of the things that came in, several questions that were asked over email, is how does WSO2 Telco address all those soft issues?
Okay, so it's a very good question. In fact, it's possibly the question. So the thing about selling cool tech, it's all very well, but if you don't have a good understanding about how to use it and the processes that may need to be put in place to use it, then the sales cycle takes longer, but also it may not be successful. And at the end of the day, everybody lives off the success of their previous relationships. So I've sort of thought up an analogy, right? So a telco, because we're very much focused on enabling telcos to partner better, quicker, faster in the ecosystem and take advantage of their quite unique position in that ecosystem. But if you treated the telco like a world, like the world, okay, because they kind of are in a way, they're these sort of amazing organizations with lots of different countries in them.
Yeah.
Those countries are like silos. And APIs are like a passport. They're a passport to go between countries. And the thing about a passport is there's a lot of process that goes behind it. It allows you to travel. It allows you to take air transport between different countries. And it allows you to do certain things in that other country, right? Because you're an approved citizen, if you like, that can go into that country. API is very similar in that respect, because you're exposing a service that has multiple different processes behind it. So the way we look at life is that there's a sort of Bible, if you like, for how to actually use a service, right? And that means that you embrace the individual country's rules and regulations, right? So SMSC owner, you've got a bunch of rules and regulations around you can participate in that particular country's activities. But then you're connecting a country to another country, and that's what the API does. But it's not just tech. It's the whole process behind it. And the idea is to get that message across to organizations. This is a global, if you like, play, as opposed to an individual country play. Obviously, telcos are local inherently, and so therefore, you know, the analogy doesn't work beyond this. But we try and help the organizations understand how to do that. And one of the things is also helping them embrace the ecosystem quicker as well. So, for example, that's what you do. You collect all sorts of different people together, lots of different services, potentially lots of different products, all of which could be consumed and or partnered with, you know, through technology, but also through a business process. So one of the things that you often find with the sort of old, how can I put it, the mature businesses, is that they've got lots and lots of silos, and they're not used to, even internally, working between each other. It takes an awful long time to get those processes working between silos or between countries. And that's what we try and do, is help organizations understand how to actually do business with this fancy new tech. There's another thing, which is that, you know, some of the legacy systems that telcos have, right, which are really powerful, big things running very, you know, big businesses, do require the older approach. They're mission critical. They're handling millions of transactions a day, sometimes billions of transactions a day, and they do need a certain level of governance. So one of the things is, look, don't mess with that. because it's there for a reason.
Yeah.
But here's a way of normalizing and access to that within the parameters. So, for example, a driving license allows you to drive a certain type of vehicle.
Yeah.
If you use that analogy, what you need to do is create the parameters around which that service can be used.
Gotcha.
Outside of which you need to go back and have another conversation.
Yeah.
All of those things need to happen in order to make things work quicker.
Gotcha.
The other thing is that technical people, right, are increasingly becoming business people.
Yeah.
So a lot of the CIOs that you meet actually have business KPIs.
Yeah.
They're not just technical KPIs, and that's a very, very important part of it. And whereas a lot of this stuff's obvious, if on paper, it's actually really difficult to implement.
Yes.
But CIOs are recognizing that they actually need to offer the businesses the agility that they need to innovate quicker, to bring products to market quicker. So one of the other things that we say is that, you're not going to move the needle in the way that the big original business or core business does. You're not in the early days.
Yeah.
What you are going to do is move the needle in terms of the way people view doing business, right? And so one of the things we try and get across is that, with the capabilities that we're talking about and with processes that have embraced the new and the old and wrapped them with a new, more agile process, you can do business faster.
Gotcha.
So a lot of our work isn't selling the tech. Right? It really isn't. There's some quite nice things about what we've got which helps move things forward, like open source, so you can actually play with it very, very early. So the concept of a POC can be initiated in a month.
Yeah.
Then you can hold their hands, if you like, and work with them towards finding the best way of using that.
Gotcha.
And finally, and this is possibly the most important thing, this isn't external enablement only. Right? It's internal enablement, and it's both technical enablement internally as well as business enablement internally. And it's a very, very important message to get across, because otherwise, digital services, for want of a better word, become a silo of their own.
Yes.
And are treated as such.
Yeah.
Right? And of course, it's not. It needs to move beyond that.
Exactly. I think that's a excellent point you make around. We have to look at this as much, if not more, an internal project. And I love the analogy you use with driving licenses and passports to help people understand what the API is enabling in terms of it's a service that has processes behind it, so that you can do certain things. So that's, I think, is a great way of sort of helping explain the broader role that you need to do in terms of helping the CIO understand. Yes, there's the technology piece, but really understanding its business impact and helping them focus on where they can have the biggest impact on their KPIs immediately. Because that's always the problem in any API project, is having the business impact as soon as possible. Not waiting 18 months, 2 years, or sort of doing a review after 2.5 years and going, well, it never really delivered what we wanted. Is really trying to come in and have that big bang. So that's, I think, really good guidance there, Amos. So moving on.
There's one other question which I think sort of is quite important, and that is that with transformation, because that effectively is what we're talking about, and it's a word that's used in many contexts. But with transformation, because the mature business tends to have had to have gone through very, very long processes to get their core infrastructure in place. And when you're beginning to change that, to modernize it, and to start to leverage some of the new technologies that are out there, because everybody knows about it. Most of these guys are very, very well informed. Right? Big bang approach is a very dangerous way of doing it, right? And an iterative approach is a much safer way of doing it. And critically, what it allows you to do is actually fail. It might not work, but it's not $100 million bet. It's a very small bet. And you go, okay, fine, that didn't quite work, or that process didn't quite work, or that we found a loophole in it, and you iterate. You don't have to go through another 9 months of working out how it works. Key.
Yeah. I think that, to me, the word transformation has been so overused, and it's been used for decades now, and generally it means a ridiculously large system integration project that never delivers. I think what you're pointing out is we can take, using APIs, an incremental innovation approach, and from that, lower the risk. So we just move, step by step. Yes, it is going to take a lot longer. Well, whether we have enough time or not, who knows? But let's face it, we've been calling for the demise of telcos, from the Economist article a decade ago, and the telecom industry is still growing. And it's a $2.2 trillion industry. So
it's not going anywhere.
Exactly.
They are. What's interesting is that also helping them understand that actually a lot of their processes internal are really good. Their marketing machine is an amazing machine because they're in almost trench warfare on a daily basis with the other telcos.
Yeah.
So that's very agile in certain areas. And they can, for example, launch telco products extremely quickly. So one of the things with internal enablement is helping that process be applied to the wider community. And the other beauty of this is that you get wins on a monthly basis. You don't wait 18 months and potentially lose half your team. You're getting quick wins all the time, and that's kudos for everybody.
Yeah, and I think particularly in the Asia-Pac market, where the trench warfare, because of prepaid, has been very vicious, and packages are almost created, within days because of a particular event, or there's something going on and they want to take advantage of it to get people to buy this particular package. So as a result, you're right, there is a cadence in parts of the business that are unusual in a lot of other countries or a lot of other regions, and really helping the whole organization take advantage of that cadence for launching more services, because in the limit, it's all about the services. And helping those operators deliver, given that they do have a fast piece of the organization, taking that and applying it more broadly across all the other services.
Absolutely right.
Cool. So let's move on to the second question. Now, one of the things you highlighted is a focus on a single code base, which is critical in the API management space. So is WSO2.Telco cloud only? Is it on-premise? Is it hybrid? And I guess depending on the answer to that, we'll follow up with a subsequent question.
Okay, so the answer is it's hybrid. I mean, it's based on a core technology that's been built from the ground up in the last 10 years. So it's very modern. It uses a lot of sort of modern concepts. The Carbon framework is the WSO2 term for their core, and it's all runs on a common runtime.
Gotcha.
Right? And that can be installed in a server in Amazon. It can be installed in a server in another DC, or it can be installed in inverted commas on-premise.
Gotcha. So part of the challenge we've seen with a lot of the API management providers is once you start to go on-prem or even hybrid, you have all these special requirements, and then you start forking code and then having to sort of maintain that and try and bring it back to the code base again. So I'm interested how you're approaching this problem that a lot of API management providers are facing. And you see, for example, in some telcos, they have a cloud deployment that's working really well. They have an on-prem deployment that's sort of there, but they're all a little bit uncomfortable. And really, the API management software provider would preferably have everything delivered in the cloud. So I'm just interested in how you solve what was, this particular problem.
So it's a really good question, and it's going to be a reasonably long answer to that. So there's two really interesting things about telcos, right? They are fundamentally local entities. Yeah. And they're regulated. And most of the people that they would like to do business at an enterprise level are also regulated.
Yeah.
So there are data considerations, there are privacy considerations, which are usually the ones that come to the fore in any conversation. Yeah. Right? The second thing is that, and so that is why we chose a hub gateway model.
Gotcha.
Right? So we've got the ability for a telco to have, if you like, an on-premise or a hybrid but in-country.
Gotcha.
Which connects into the various subsystems. But that gateway, we call it an API, WSO2.Telco gateway. It's an API. It's a full API management solution. Can talk to hubs, and hubs can be in country. So that, for example, a health organization that might want to use that hub, but utilize some of the telco services that are enabled on other hubs can communicate together and benefit from that. But also, groups can start looking at regional plays where they consolidate some services centrally. critical to that is, and this is now I'm talking about sort of above the line, northbound.
Yeah.
Critical
Yeah, yeah.
is the ability to anonymize that data which can't legally leave the country.
Yeah.
So we, from the ground up, built it in that way to address those very real issues that telcos have. And that enables, by definition, them to become global. So we're effectively creating a local, which can become regional, which can become global, OTT layer that telcos can benefit from, either within themselves or partnering with other telcos where relevant, or indeed partnering with global OTTs.
Gotcha.
The second part of the question is the concept behind APIs, right? So for the longest time, APIs have existed. Most of the SMSCs and USSD gateways and other systems have got, in inverted commas, APIs.
Yeah.
Probably they're quite difficult to use and they're not normalized, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. So the first stage of telco evolution was to start to embrace, in inverted commas, service-oriented architectures. And those have resulted in a plethora of enterprise service buses, if you like, which they plug the core systems into. There's a mediation aspect to it, there's an orchestration aspect to it, and there's also a translation aspect to it, translating the language of the discrete system into a more common language. And in our case, we tend to work with REST APIs.
Yeah.
So that has also been prevalent for a while. But the problem was that most of the processes around consuming services that had been exposed via this service bus were still consumed with point integrations into the service bus.
Exactly. Yeah.
What the API layer does is it allows you to govern multiple connections into the same discrete service that was originally exposed and iterate fast. So you can have version 1, which remains in play for 90% of all your business, but version 1.1 iterates that particular schema, gives you functionality. It might even mash up. It might use a microservice or some other service that's been exposed and do that. That's absolutely key. So that is where this comes in, and it's very simple. It's really simple stuff. Basic rule of thumb. If there's ever a chance of using that service again, expose it via an API.
Exactly. Exactly.
And how that works.
Yep. And I guess, and this is sort of linking back to the previous question on agility. Reuse is key. Now, I'm just interested, given some of the projects that you're doing, how do you encourage the all the different groups within the telco to reuse APIs? Because part of the challenge in the early days on a lot of projects is everybody has special requirements and wants their own API with their own SLAs and their own definitions, and it's there's a sort of a fight between reuse, which is where you see significant gains in performance and cost, and where you've just got APIs being created up the wazoo because everybody has their special requirements.
Well, so it's an interesting thing. I mean, again, it's down to what the requirement actually is in the first instance.
Okay.
But the second thing is selling. So this is back to the first question. It's about actually advertising the fact that these are available and basically almost giving people a sort of KPI. Go and have a look at your internal API gate portal and see if there's something that fits the bill. If it does, don't redo it, because the opportunity cost second time round is almost 90% reduction. Right? So there's some live projects that we've got on the go with clients where they've seen dramatic improvement in speed to market for internal products and services, right? So the nirvana where you've got this one single my telco app and stuff. It's actually difficult to do, right? Because you've got to put CRM systems in there, you've got to put billing systems in there, you've got to make multiple systems. Key is, once you've done it, you've then got a framework that will allow you to do that with anything. So instead of having my MNO, you've got an affiliate relationship with someone that can use a subset of that capability and present another service, right? And that is absolutely key. So I'm going to also answer your point about iterations and multiple things that people may ask. I want it to be like that. I want it better. Two answers. And this is also why we're quite a unique organization in relation to middleware companies, because we've taken a horizontal layer that is just amazingly flexible. You can do a ton of stuff with it. And we've created a vertical solution that recognizes how telcos operate and also optimizes lots of those processes. So the first is, ask the question. do you really need to go back into your billing system for this? Right? You've got a B2B relationship with a service provider. Do you actually need to bill for that? Or could we use our billing layer and have a B2B relationship that way? Much more flexible, right? Because otherwise you've got a very, very, very long integration into the billing system with all the associated processes. Second thing is that we ourselves have chosen not to fork WSO2 core.
Gotcha.
So what we now are a small company, relatively speaking, backed by a big company with 500 plus engineers who are building some very cool stuff on their carbon core.
Gotcha.
So we use multiple different modules, and those modules are configurable. So what it means is that we can do an awful lot of work at that layer, again, without messing with the original telco system. This is where things like microservices come in, because you can just expose a very, very little bit of one big CRM system, which will give you that capability of querying someone's records in relation to usage or whatever it is.
Yep.
Then mash that up and use it in some other way without messing with the subsystem. So one of our projects is, something like 400 microservices have been exposed, and there's a list of another 1,200 that will be. And the internal marketplace for that capability, for internal products, they're private APIs, they're not exposed to public, they're inside the DMZ, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And then a subset of those, subject to the right use cases, and again, subject to defining the parameters within which you can use that service, which can be regulatory, financial, whatever you want, can be exposed northbound into the wider ecosystem. So it's about marketing. It's just like hackathons. It's like internal hackathons, literally, and KPIs associated with that. And everybody wins, but it's an iterative process.
No, I think that's an excellent point. And I mean, we see it very practically in telcos where, for example, is this a customer of ours? What plan are they on? Very slim, very focused pieces of information that other services just need to know. And from that, then they can then happily go away and not need to talk to the CRM systems or talk to the billing systems for a whole host of other customer interactions. That's a great explanation there, Amos. And you also sort of mentioned, you're backed by the carbon core. So this was a question that popped up again several times. Are you a division within WSO2? Are you an independent company? So there's several people trying to understand sort of your relationship to the the core software.
It's a very good question. So WSO2 is actually an investor in WSO2.Telco, but WSO2.Telco is an entirely independent company.
Gotcha.
Right? So we are like if you like, a sort of premier OEM. We carry their name, we champion their cause. Gotcha. Their cause is very, very closely aligned with ours in terms of many of the concepts around usage of agile technology, etc. We champion the open source cause. It's key. We feel it's very important. It gets people across the line quicker. But at the same time, what we've done is taken a very broad set of capabilities that work for people like eBay and Boeing and the US State Department, etc. With the identity stuff. And then created telco solutions on top of that that are not only fit for purpose, but are not critically going down the SDP route. So SDPs have their place. They totally do, right? Because there's some stuff that's got to be baked in, and there's huge organizations that use that capability, and etc. But the agile mindset is actually exposing some of those SDP capabilities that can be consumed much, much quicker than you might otherwise be able to do. And so we are in a very interesting hybrid world here, because any industry, could be airline, health, whatever, they will have their SDPs, right? And they've been painstakingly built, but they are also very inflexible. And what we're talking about is a world where there's so many different services that are brought to bear on the one product. And so the obvious examples are people like Uber and Amazon and others, but almost any service these days is doing that. And that's the ability we want. And our vision is ultimately that if you've got a telco account with your local telco, which again it is, you should be able to enjoy multiple services wherever you are in the world.
Exactly.
But still based on that original core relationship.
No, that's good. And I guess being independent as well enables you to do, because telco is special, you can form maybe some relationships, deliver in some projects with potentially competitors that maybe WSO2 wouldn't want to do, but you can potentially deliver on because of your focus on telco?
So it is, and also there's a lot of people in the ecosystem that some of the larger SIs and stuff that are beginning to and they also have the ability to assimilate new technologies.
Yeah.
And so those relationships are very fruitful, but again, they're very vertically focused, right? So when they engage with us, they're coming to an organization that totally gets it.
Yeah.
We're telco people, we've been in telcos. We also have people who've been in the outside world and doing other stuff, and that's really, if you like, a perfect hybrid. And they get that their longer term relationship will rely on them also being agile and also not trying to sell in the SDP because it's what they have on the shelf.
Exactly.
How can we iterate?
Yeah, that's a very good point. Excellent. So we're already coming up on the half hour, so let me just jump through some of the questions. One was from the presentation. This was sort of asked during the event, but I think just asking it sort of a little bit more directly, shall we say. You show one API compliant, but isn't one API discredited?
This is a very good question. So here's the thing, right? So this was built inside the telco originally, right? So this was a Skunkworks, a wonderful organization that was empowered to innovate, right? Internally. And they had to start somewhere. So you pick a framework, you iterate that framework, and you work it through. But obviously, they don't always work. Obviously, they're not always optimal. And by the way, a lot aren't. So all we did was take as a baseline. It's a baseline that does actually help because it also means that quite early on you can interoperate with other telcos that may have chosen that baseline. But it's there for the change. It's there for changing, and that's what lifecycle management is all about. So version 1.1 of the SMS API is better than the SMS API, and that's cool. That's how it is. That's how it works.
Yeah, I think that's what we see in quite a few telcos. Telecom Italia are very open. I know the guys well, and they say, well, yeah, it's a baseline. It sort of helps us. We start from somewhere. It's not necessarily, it isn't what we're using internally, but we used it as a baseline.
So there's a really interesting conversation around standards, right? And I've sort of been a little outspoken on that from time to time. Here's the thing, right? You put any group of 5 or 6 people in an industry, but let's call it telco for the moment, they can solve 80% of any problem on a whiteboard in a day, right? The next 2 years is just stargazing. It's looking into the wide galaxy and finding out what the other edge cases are. Our view is solve it 80% and iterate. And then by that time, you've got something that's meaningful, it's got life use cases, and it works. Now, no one's saying you don't need standards because, the whole mobile phone network is built on that, and it had to be. And that's why the biggest success story in telcos has been global roaming and compatibility of handsets and everything else. Huge. No way they could have pulled that off without standards, right? No way they could have pulled that without governance and all the rest of it.
Exactly.
My point is, in this new age where things are moving at ridiculous speeds, and you've got, a choice on Alibaba of 400 variants of the same sensor for IoT, right? You're not going to standardize it overnight. So come up with a common set of protocols, right? You know what it's going to be. It's going to be command, control, data, analytics, whatever. You know roughly what it is. Build 80% of it and iterate. And that way, your smart cities and your IoT projects and your other things will happen in orders of magnitude quicker because they're not waiting for a standard. Right? Exactly. APIs and the whole concept of it and the whole concept of the way that you manage them will allow you to iterate and come up with a standard pretty fast. And so that's it.
No, and I think the other point is, I agree for you and I, for a device talking into the network and NNI between networks, but what we're talking about is API. It's between an application and the network. And as a result, it's a different interface. So I think that's been part of the problem, is the success of the UNI and to a lesser extent NNI standards has sort of meant, well, this is a great hammer, let's use it everywhere. And as a result, it's been used where, exactly to your point, it didn't need to be used, where we could just take a very practical 80-20 approach and then iterate. But it's a cultural change as well, so that's a very good point.
It's a use case thing, because again, it's two things, because let's not muddle up, very powerful systems that can handle peak time traffic of telephone calls at 6 o'clock in the evening, right? With the agile approach to building up stuff that may have that potential but doesn't yet.
Yeah.
When it does, you will industrialize it, and you will make sure that it's standardized to the extent that it's robust, understood, and critically able to be maintained on an ongoing basis, right? So there is a balance to be had, and the balance is, as the needle moves and that business becomes stronger. I mean, look at any of the organizations that we kind of know globally have iterated. Amazon's infrastructure now is not what it was then. It totally is. The only thing they said was everything's got to talk to everything else.
Yeah.
But they now have very, very robust management capability for AWS, for example.
Yeah.
eBay will be the same. They run on WSO2 stack as it happens, and so it goes on.
Yeah.
So that's how.
Oh yeah, I agree. There's that transition. I agree. And I guess part of it is when we say the word standard, it's because it's emerged through practical experience rather than being a thought experiment. So because it's standardized. Well, it's not truly standardized because there isn't international ratification. It's the thing that works within our business, and we've basically built the scale and the performance around it so that it just works. And take Amazon as an example. That basket sits there no matter what crashes, what goes on, whether we lose a data center, that basket is still there so the customer can press checkout and ka-ching, the money comes in.
It's also context-based, right? So one of the interesting things about standards in smart cities is they're saying, let's go for a global standard. Why? They're local.
Yeah, exactly.
Get on with it. Make your city smart. Iterate through the various different things that you think would go towards making a smart city, but then normalize it.
Exactly.
Layer, so that if and when other cities want to communicate, or you want to start international, I can't actually think of one right now, but I'm sure there is.
Oh yeah. No, that's a good one. So just quickly, because of the sake of time, I'll ask a very direct question, and this popped up from again several emails. How does WSO2.Telco compare to Apogee and Standard Mobile? How do you position yourself versus those two companies?
It's a very interesting question, and obviously there's no one answer for that.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest comparisons would be, and this is just a route we chose to take.
Yeah.
We're open source.
Yeah.
Right. And that means that we're inherently more agile, right? It's not an STP mindset. It's not a black box. It's a white box.
Yeah.
So I think from that point of view, to your previous question about those iterations that you have to do, I think in the scheme of things, we're probably going to be fairly cost-effective approach if you do have multiple customizations that you want to make.
Yeah.
But from a functionality point of view, broadly speaking, in various different ways, they do the same thing, and that's the nature of a competitive situation, right?
Yep.
The other thing is that, obviously there's ecosystem, right?
Yep.
So everybody's interested in the opportunity that an ecosystem presents. I think all of the organizations are looking at it in one form or another.
Exactly.
We have a slightly different approach to ecosystem. We think that ultimately telcos should interoperate. So our view is that if one or two or three or four or half a dozen have taken our code base as its standard, that they can potentially have relationships between each other.
Exactly.
Right? So we're not into the silo mentality, the absolute opposite.
Yeah.
And open source promotes that, because if we've created a baseline and it works and it's in play and it's addressing 1 billion customers, which we're quite close to at this point, then that's 1 billion customers that if you've got a similar methodology you can plug into, right?
Exactly.
So I think that's a different way of looking at life. But also Apogee is a very horizontal company, so I wouldn't say we're actually competing with them. I'd actually say they're competing with WSO2.
Good point.
That is the comparison with them.
Yeah.
Standard Mobile is different. Standard's more telco focused. They're a very good company. They've got some really great, discrete SDP type solutions. They've got boxes that do USSD and other things, and they've been in business for quite a long time. So it's just a question of where you fit.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point. In that the competition is between Apogee and WSO2, but you've got that vertical focus, and as a result, you can deliver more, sort of focused solutions, and potentially partner in particular situations, because let's face it, we're seeing telcos deploy multiple API management platforms, and you can imagine a situation where there maybe is a couple of platforms and they're using you on maybe for interoperable services across the group, while they're using another potentially competitor for maybe more local focused or more cloud focused applications.
You've got it, and in fact, it's very interesting that, because we've got 2 or 3 relationships at the moment where multiple gateways are being looked at, and this is going back to 2 things. One, don't mess with the core process at this stage. Iterate it.
Yeah.
And the API helps you do that, and the whole mindset helps you do that. So if an internal organization wants to use one system for them and one system, and the digital services have another system, it makes a ton of sense.
Exactly.
And that's possibly where we also differentiate, because we have a very powerful system. The transactional throughput of our system is orders of magnitude better than other similar systems. And so you can consequently deploy it cheaper than you might otherwise be able to do, and therefore you can make that choice. And that choice is important, because then, see, one of the big problems about the big transformation projects is that they've got to embrace multiple different requirements. That's actually why they take so long, because the generic aim of an organization when they're doing these things is to cohere, to move on, to advance, to be more agile, everything. Of course it is. Most people, I mean, they're very well-informed organizations, telcos. They really know a lot about a lot of things. But the process sometimes chokes them.
Exactly.
The ability to put one here and one here gets over that. It releases a choke point, if you like, and allows you to move forward quicker, and then you realize later. The other thing I'd say about the vertical thing is but consider us like a Roman fir tree, right? The ones that have all the beautiful fur on the top, right? So you go up, then we'll go out. And that is the potential of what we've got. So whereas we're focusing in on telcos and to enable them, there's going to be a lot of other opportunities for us to promote that thing. And part of it's the playbook.
Cool. Yeah, exactly. So that's good. So we've done the one API. The other one is Mobile Connect, which has struggled to an extent, again, because identity is something that's solved on the web in a lot of your customers. So just interested to understand, you've from the slides that were presented, Mobile Connect was there, but do you work with any other identity authentication frameworks?
Yes. So, I mean, look, first of all, OpenID Connect is actually what Mobile Connect's based on, right? So our identity services and server is aligned with, if you like, the wider standard. Yeah. I personally happen to think that Mobile Connect conceptually is an incredible opportunity for telcos. I mean, really incredible opportunity. And my opinion also is it does not need to be global because of the relatively local nature of telcos. So if a group get together in a given country, that opportunity for them is huge, right? It's only the first phase of it. The thing about identity in its generic form is it is the first transaction of many. It's critical to understand that. And governments see that. The first transaction, going back to the international paradigm, right? The first transaction is showing your passport.
Correct.
That you get on a plane. That allows you to get off the plane, and it allows you to walk around the country the other end, right? So that's a key thing. But the interesting thing about identity is it's also a local issue. Because of your primary persona, which is your passport, right? And then you've got the secondary one, which is more global, which is, if you like, the social persona. But you've got your life persona, which is the one that's around countries and cities and all that good stuff. That's where we're going with it.
Gotcha.
We have a very, very powerful identity solution that can do everything from federated identity to single sign-on. And we're talking to a lot of telcos about doing that, independent, critically, of their core. So it can leverage core, it can leverage their current sort of 360 view of their customer, what they may have. All of them are going for it. And it can leverage it in the same way as you might leverage loyalty. So it's like an identity layer, a loyalty layer, etc. And we have we're building a very powerful product on that. So this is we think is core. I hate the word, but I've used it again. We think it's a very important part of life. I think it's going to be a very important sort of function that people are going to want.
Yes.
And ultimately, and this is where it starts to get interesting, is customers being able to actually manage their own identities in a better way than it's currently.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're both agreed that it's a massive opportunity. And here in the US, there's a company called Payphone, Payphone, who solved the sort of authentication problem using telco, but for a vertical, financial services. And it's very interesting. I mean, you basically you say you go to Wells Fargo, they'll then direct you to their site where they suck out basically your IMSI, your SIM details, and then do a check back to the telcos to see, does this all correlate? Does this make sense with the account that exists there? And as a result, can say, okay, they're just using a different phone, but it's the same SIM. Or they can say, okay, this isn't the same phone, it isn't the same SIM, and raise a red flag. So it's very, I think in terms of identity management, in authentication, there are just so many opportunities at the moment, and it comes back to this iteration. I'm seeing a lot of work on platforms, while, to be honest, where the money is really in delivering business solutions to business problems. And what I've seen with Payphone is a great example of focusing locally, which is to your point, Amos, in the US, and solving it in the US, then expanding to Canada. Once they get that done, then expanding to London, and then more broadly across Europe. So I guess we're aligned on the opportunity. How you execute upon it, I think that is where I think the success or failure criteria will really hit.
Look, I think it's an interesting one, and it may or may not succeed in the way that has been envisioned, right? But the conversations happened, and the conversations happened in the context of telco's unique position in people's lives, and uniquely local position in people's lives, because most people, a very small percentage of a percentage point are the global travelers. The rest of people are very much local. But it's very tied into digital country.
Yeah.
Right? Digital, Malaysia or digital Indonesia.
Correct.
Or digital Indonesia. It's very much tied into that, and it's also very much tied into the aspects of your life that matter to you on a daily basis, that actually will have significant impact if they go wrong for you, or if your data is missing. And that is the life stuff. That's the banks, the insurance, all that sort of stuff. The social stuff, it can remain relatively Wild West, but I still can't imagine that Facebook will ever become prevalent in banking transactions, for example. Just won't happen.
No. Yeah.
So that's where this needs to be. And then the next question is the extent to which the customer has their own control over it. So regulations require that you can get information off the government or whatever. But practically, it doesn't happen. You have to ring up some regulatory body and say, can I have my data back? I think going, right? And I think this is another interesting area.
Cool. No, absolutely. And definitely through this year, I think we're going to see a lot of discussions and moving away from just the more abstract discussions around what's the platform, and really focusing on using whatever's on the shelves to start creating some business. So definitely around the whole identity authentication, big opportunities. So we've run, basically we try to aim for 20 minutes. We're at sort of over 40 minutes. So I guess closing, is there anything else you'd like to add? I mean, this has been an amazing session. Amos, really enjoyed this conversation. A lot of very current insights around how telcos need to approach API management. But anything else you want to leave us with?
It's a difficult one. I mean, I think it's about internal communication. Give everybody a passport internally to talk to the other be how these sort of very fundamental things that you're working with can be federated or shared across these silos, because there is still a huge opportunity, and the quicker that is enabled, if you like, the better it will be for everybody.
Absolutely. And I think one point you mentioned right at the start, sorry Amos, is KPI. You force people to use it. It has to be in their KPIs. Otherwise, old mentalities continue. So it was one of those where in several of my projects, it took so much education to get people to realize the benefit for them. I think whatever we can do to short circuit that, so they're just, because everybody's selfish, they're acting in their own self-interest. If using using an internal API means that they achieve a particular KPI, so they get closer to the bonus faster, then that's a great way of just forcing that reuse, which has a far broader organizational benefit.
It is, and it's a user experience. I mean, the mindset for APIs is similar to CRM, right? So CRM doesn't work if you put a system in, but it does work if everybody's thinking about the customer.
Yep.
Most times, telcos ask the right question. They say, what's the user experience? But it's always in a very vertically focused mindset, whereas there's a much broader conversation. I mean, even digital services inside telcos getting access to the data from the mothership would be useful to start, right? Because at least the context is alive and well with everybody. And what, the thing is, there's a ton of amazing people in telcos, really amazing. They've got, most of the people I've ever met in telcos totally know what they're doing, but in the context of what they've been asked to do.
Exactly.
And API that goes broader, that's important. It's very difficult.
Yep, no, that's a very good point to finish on. So, Amos, thank you for an excellent TADSummit Revisited session, and look forward to many more conversations through the year. So again, thanks so much. Bye-bye, Amos.
Thanks, Alan. Bye.